And welcome, fight fans. Wow, what a night. Stipe Miocic is a beast. Joanna champion, also beast. I got your full review of tonight's cards from the Fight.Plus prelims to the FX, all the way on to the pay-per-view coming up next. All right, welcome, fight fans. It's Saturday night, and it's the prelims, the UFC Fight.Plus prelims. Excuse me. We had 3 fights on there. Just wanted to get to these real quick. Trying to get these in before, excuse me, before the pay-per-view. So, first fight was, of course, Yair Christensen against Gazmarad Antagilov. And let me tell you, I had Antagilov in this, and he did not disappoint. It was a little sloppy at first. Kind of rushed in to close the distance. He got hit, but he did manage to get the single leg takedown. But, Christensen was able to work his way back up to the feet, and it kind of went a little bit back and forth for a little bit, but he actually was able to get him back down. And just checking out my notes there real quick. Yeah, he was able to get him back down, and he got the hooks in, and he got the submission. Antagilov was definitely pretty relentless in this, and looked pretty impressive. I was definitely happy. Being that obviously I picked him in this fight, and I thought he would get something in there by a submission, and it was definitely looked good for him. So we're gonna see where he goes next. To be quite honest, I'm not too good at matching up these guys when they're kind of young in that career. I leave that up to to Mick and Sean, or who's ever doing that weight class right now. But we will definitely see. The second fight was definitely a very interesting 145-pound matchup between Enrique Barzola and Gabriel Benitez. Barzola, ATT product, and Benitez trains over there up there in the San Jose area with the AKA, American Kickboxing Academy. Sorry, I was starting to confuse myself there real quick, but I got it. But, first round, there's a lot of hard kicks, a lot of hard punches back and forth there in the first round. Barzola just kind of kept that pressure, man, and kind of kept pushing. It was definitely a very interesting fight. I thought Benitez won the first round. That was just my opinion, even though there were some takedowns. So, there was a lot of scrambles back up. Second round, I would definitely give the Barzola. He just kind of controlled the action more, and it just seemed like Benitez was just kind of taking a rest because he didn't seem to throw as many hard shots and land as many hard shots as he landed in that first round. And Barzola just kind of kept that pressure and getting the takedown. It just kind of hard to give you a reminder of who he kind of reminded me of, but he just was definitely hard with the pressure, and as soon as he would get him up against the fence, man, he would just go for those legs and kind of get him down. Benitez fought back a lot, fought back to his feet a lot, and for the most part, it didn't seem like a lot of Barzola's punches and a lot of his ground and pound did too much damage, but he did definitely, win the second round. The first round was definitely could have went either way. Like I said, I gave it to Benitez. So, so far in the fight, going into the third, I had it 1-1. So yeah, just starting these next fights up pretty quick, trying to get these in before that. James Vick's walking out right now, but the third round was definitely interesting. Started to open up back, really a lot more. So I was definitely impressed by that. So I got to say, the whole third round kind of landed down to those last 10 seconds, man. And finally, a lot of those straight lefts and hooks that Benitez was landing throughout this fight, finally he tagged him probably with the best one of the entire fight and knocked him down. But, the bell kind of rung. I mean, that counted. Probably won him the round. Probably won him the round, but come to find out, it probably only won him the round on all three judges' scorecards because they all scored at 29-28, and they gave it to Barzola. Can't really argue too much with that. So, moving on to the ladies, Jessica Aguilar and Courtney Casey. Casey looked really, really good in this. Was landing so many of these up kicks throughout the fight. I mean, the fight started out with she landed an up kick like 10 seconds in. She must have landed at least about 36 up kicks through the rest of this fight. But, she was landing just multiple combinations. It was fantastic. She really looked good, and Aguilar looked really surprisingly. I didn't think. Let me tell you, she's got a hell of a chin, man, and because Casey was landing some hard shots and landing some hard up kicks through this entire fight. The first round was probably the closest of them all. All three rounds really went to Courtney Casey, I thought. She was really impressive, not just with her up kicks. She was landing a lot of kicks off of her back, hyperextending the knees, and there was some ground and pound back by Jessica Aguilar. By no means did Jessica Aguilar not, hang into this fight very much, but it was very close, very entertaining. I was so impressed. It seems like Courtney Casey has come very far, and very impressed by her. Where she goes next, you can definitely give her someone in the top 10 at this point. Coming off of that win, she doesn't have too many losses here in UFC, and she takes fights no matter who it is. I mean, Casey was blitzing in, she was landing hooks and straights and going back and forth. I mean, this was a great fight. I mean, all the judges gave it. It was a 30-27, I believe. Yeah, 30-27 on all three cards. So, definitely a very, very entertaining fight. These Fight Pass prelims were certainly very entertaining. And down to the first one, which I knew was gonna not go over 7 minutes, and it didn't even go over 2. Didn't even get to 5. We didn't even get to the second round. So, a lot of times when they give you that over under, they give you the over under like 7 minutes or half of the fight. That one was definitely, I thought, was going to be under for some reason, and I thought Antigilov was going to do something. He just seems to want to finish, and it's a very interesting to see who you can kind of match him up with right now. I'm definitely going to have to look into the light heavyweight division and him, because hopefully there's some guys, that are amongst that top, trying to break into that top 10 that might be pretty interesting matchups for somebody within that 5 to 10 rankings, because it's so tight. You never know who's going to jump in there, man. I mean, you had 4 or 5 guys, especially now Anthony Johnson left, but you have 4 guys, and one of them was suspended. So, when you talk about when you talk about these guys, these 2 featherweights that fought there, Barzola and Benitez, both very impressive. So, like I said, when you talk about them in this fight and where they land in the rankings, we will definitely see. So, they're both still up and coming. See if they can move off the Fight Pass prelims, And like I said, Courtney Casey, she definitely gets another top 10 opponent. And I'd like to see Aguilar. I'd like to see Aguilar fight again kind of soon, maybe in the next 3-4 months. Get a fight and maybe start a training camp. Hopefully, she's not injured or anything. It didn't seem like she was. And get in there and try to get on some kind of roll again, because she had this 10-fight winning streak going right now, and now she's lost 2 in a row, so I guarantee you she's going to want to hop back in there pretty fast. So, James Vick, very impressive victory for James Vick over El Toro. Fight didn't last long. I guess James Vick kind of looks like Skeletor most of the time, because let me tell you, he definitely didn't look healthy at the weigh-ins, and kind of didn't really look too healthy going into this fight. So, I was definitely a little shocked, but I guess I just have to probably stop betting against him, because I kind of think that is what it's definitely been a couple mistakes of mine. So they were just showing Michael Chiesa and Kevin Lee. I'm trying to get these in so the review doesn't go out too late instead of going too crazy. So we had a couple knockouts and a couple really good close fights. So, but as of right now, I just wanted to talk about the Vic versus Marco Polo Reyes El Toro. Vic was very impressive in this, and very, very impressive. I didn't foresee him finishing the fight in the way that he did, and it was definitely super impressive. So another very good victory for Mr. James Vick. I just want to bring up the exact time that he had done that in. All right, yeah, it was round one. Basically got him TKO to strikes, hit him with a left, and then just got him with this, monstrous elbow, really. And I'm sorry, no, got him with a nice kick, and very impressive, very, very impressive. Started out with a leg kick from Reyes. They traded leg kicks. Reyes was just out of range. But Vic landed a left, counter right hook. They clinched up, knee, spinning back kick from Vic, and that kind of floored Reyes, and then hammer fist over and over, and it was just really kind of over after that. So definitely very impressive. But the most really impressive thing about so far on this card kind of were these two heavyweights, man, and I really underestimated Chase Sherman. Coming in, he really needed a win coming into this fight, and really looked like he got one. But I got to tell you, Richard Coulter showed so much heart, man, in this, and was super, super impressed by him, man. These guys, he was landing leg kick after leg kick on Coulter. And it came to a point where even Rogan and Cormier were just like, they probably should stop this fight. And this is kind of in the second round. And as soon as they started to say that, he kind of hit Sherman with a hook of his own, and it just kind of started to change the tide of the fight. And next thing you know, they're going back and forth. And both these guys were exhausted, man. Now, these are two huge monsters just pounding, just landing shots on each other. So very impressive. I hope these guys get a nice little hefty bonus, as they really put it out there tonight, man. And Chase Sherman obviously saved himself. He wins by TKO in the second round. Basically landed nice strikes and then an elbow, and just kind of knocked Coulter right down, and he kind of landed in an awkward position. I hope he didn't get hurt, man, because that guy was super, super impressive. So, super impressive. So, yeah, that's James Vick. Victory over Marco Polo Reyes. TKO strikes, 229 in the first round. And the very impressive heavyweight fight between Coulter and Sherman. Chase Sherman defeats Richard Coulter by KO and elbow of 336 in the second round. So super, super impressive, like I said. We still got two more fights coming up on FX, and it definitely should be interesting. Have a little bit of a little lull during the broadcast because of, the two knockouts. We can't wait to see what happens. And coming up, so definitely stay tuned. Jason Knight versus Chaz Skelly. The third fight of the FX prelims, 145-pound matchup. Went over these guys went over these two in the preview. If you missed that, please check that out on the channel. And this was kind of built up to be a barn burner, and let me tell you, it definitely was. Back and forth for 3 rounds. Basically, I kind of had Knight winning the rounds, winning the first round and the second round. He was just landing a lot more shots, a lot more, harder shots, and I thought, with the pressure. But, it's, Chase Skelly is a scrapper, man, and he is one hell of a fighter and one tough SOB. This fight ended in the third round, 39 seconds of the third round. And let me tell you, he landed it was like a left uppercut, kind of lunging, almost like a hook type of, punch. And when he hit that, Skelly went down. Now, this is after. This was back and forth, man. We had 2 guys bloodied up, cuts everywhere. Skelly was taken a lot, man. He took a Kimura that, we later found out that, at least from Knight's perspective after the fight, that he heard that arm pop, and he gave him, mad props, and was, totally, totally very, a very gracious winner. Jason Knight auctioning off, or handing he was going to autograph his gloves and give it away to somebody in the stands that was making the most crazy noise. But let me tell you, man, when he knocked down Chaz Skelly, from that left uppercut, he went in there, hit him with a couple shots when he was down, an elbow, almost looked like a 12-6, but, wasn't, kind of went so fast. I kind of miss some of those with some of those 12-6s, man. To me, those are kind of hard to judge. But, then he started landing shots. And from the start, man, as soon as Skelly hit the ground, you kind of knew the fight was over. And, at least after the elbow, he landed 2 shots, then an elbow, and then 13 straight shots or so before the ref even stopped it. And I think that was probably around, at least 10 or 11 shots that didn't even need to be taken, by Chaz Skelly, man. And, that ref should have definitely jumped in a lot earlier. And when he landed that shot, I was just like, whoa! I screamed so loud. I couldn't believe that was definitely one of the best punches of the entire night so far. Even, going into the next fight, which we'll get into real quick, obviously the Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, where there's some controversy. But to finish up, with this fight, I'd like to see where these guys go, man. You might actually see Skelly or Knight, Knight maybe get, Bard's, not Bardzera, but, hold on, from the second fight of the night, Barzola, both of those guys winning. Have almost close to the same amount of fights, man, and I maybe you match those guys up, and then winner of that, possibly can get a top 10 opponent, the 145. I'm gonna start putting out some more state of the UFC divisions. I did do a 155-pound. That was my first podcast ever, the Objective Perspective, episode 1. The state of the lightweight division. Go check that out, definitely on the channel. And it goes over the lightweight division. I actually wanted to match up Chiesa and Mike and Lee. This is all even before they put those matchups out. I talk about Nate Diaz and Tony Ferguson. And like I said, this is all before it became mainstream news. This was my first video that I did. It's like first week of April, so you can kind of see everything that's kind of happened after that. But to move on to the next fight, which was the premier fight of the prelims. Eddie Alvarez, the former champ, first fight back since his loss to Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier. who is fighting for the first time since the same night that he actually fought the same night as Eddie Alvarez lost. He fought against Jim Miller and won in that, in Brooklyn. That was a little later, excuse me. Dustin fought in Brooklyn in February, but did lose before that to Michael Johnson, but has rebounded. This was a this was a good fight, but the first round was a little bit slow. Not too much really going on there. Some exchanges back and forth, but definitely seemed like a feeling out process. Eddie went in for some takedowns, and Dustin stuffed a lot of those takedowns. But going into the second round, man, they came out, and Eddie came out like a Spitfire, man. Looked like he was, definitely kind of done with that feeling out process. So, they were going at it for a minute, and all of a sudden, man, Dustin lands a left hand, and that really hurt Eddie, man. And he was really pounding on Eddie, had to back up against the fence, and was landing some shots, some hooks and everything. And it was not looking good for Eddie Alvarez at one point, but Eddie weathered the storm like you cannot doubt Eddie Alvarez, man. And he hung in there like you would not believe. And he started landing his own shots. Eddie gets in there and started looking like when he was throwing against Rafael Dos Anjos. And all of a sudden, that tide kind of turned, and Eddie got a takedown. And they were just going at it. But they got up against the fence, and, Eddie's throwing some shots in there. And Dustin, was kind of down on a knee and was getting up. And he did have a hand down, and Eddie landed a knee, and his hand came off of the canvas, and he kind of was throwing those knees, and then Dustin did have a knee down, and he landed one more shot. It was like one of those heat in the moments. I definitely don't think Eddie was doing that. Was definitely not any type of an intentional, knee to injure. I think Eddie was hurt. And, just in that, like, survival mode, and, probably wasn't totally thinking of the rules after he was kind of really going. He was just kind of landing those shots, trying to finish, not even really realizing that, oh, shit, yeah, man, this guy's his hands down or his knees down at this point. So Herb Dean had stopped it. The doctors came in. He was asking a lot of questions. And, Dustin just really didn't seem like he can continue. He was complaining that something was really bulging with his eye and hurting. Let me tell you, he taken some serious shots there. Herb told him that. So then basically Herb said, either way, the fight's so you're done. Because he didn't really know which way, he was going to judge the fight. But Herb Dean judged it a no contest, Damian, because of an unintentional knee. I kind of disagree. I'm a fan. I have nothing but respect for Eddie Alvarez. Nothing but respect, and I don't think that it was an intentionally illegal blow. But also, I don't feel like there always has to be some intention to harm. To automatically enforce something. You could have disqualified Eddie for an illegal knee because there was an illegal knee, whether it was an intentional blow or not, that kind of stopped the fight. Now, they were kind of talking back and forth a little bit about, the new rules and if they've been adapted yet with the hands up. Herb Dean kind of probably could have gotten in there a little faster and just tried to stop it. But I think he thought that the first knee was legal. I think he kind of caught it late because the hand did kind of come up on a contact. From what he was saying, he didn't, the first knee was legal, but the first knee, I think that's what he was saying. So I was trying to catch that. But the first knee was definitely illegal. Joe Rogan kept going over that. So the last I heard through the broadcast was that was illegal, the first one, and obviously the second one with him down. But they ended up ruling a no contest. So both fighters got the interview with Rogan. I really didn't catch everything what they totally said. I know that there's nothing with bad blood and they're totally not against each other there. So you never know. They definitely, I can see them rematching and doing this fight again sometime. Probably not within the next month. Both guys are kind of banged up, pretty bad with cuts. Dustin Poirier had a gash that looks like, it was a pretty thick gash over the left eye. So definitely a great fight. I wish it didn't end the way it did. Kind of curious to see what would have happened if Eddie would have finished it, if he didn't kind of land those illegal knees, and if Dustin would have came back and maybe re-hurt Eddie. You never know. But no contest in the premier match on the FX prelims, which was Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier because of an illegal knee, and the Chaz Skelly versus Jason Knight. Jason Knight defeating him by TKO in the third round. And now the pay-per-view portion of the evening. I gotta say, definitely a good night of fights. Hopefully, the pay-per-view did start out a little slow, unlike the rest, of the evening. The Fight Pass prelims was pretty exciting. Most of the fights, even the ones that went to decision, were really action-packed. A little bit of controversy in the main event. The main event of the prelims, I forgot what they like to call it. Anyway, it's getting late, man. Long night of fights here tonight. I've been watching, obviously, since 6:30. It is now pretty late here on the East Coast. 1:11 a.m. Sunday morning. So, a lot of videos and a lot of minutes behind in front of the camera behind this microphone here today. So, hopefully, we'll see how it goes. But this first fight of the prelims was David Branch versus Krystof Jotko. And to tell you the truth, I didn't think it was really as bad of a fight as what the crowd was really booing for. I mean, it did have its moments, a lot of fights do. But, overall, it wasn't too bad. Pretty decent fight. Pretty decent fight overall. Obviously, Branch hasn't always been the most exciting. He's supposed to be pretty good on the ground, and you always wonder why he doesn't do more on the ground, at least in his UFC fights. I mean, this is his first time that he's been back since, he was, in the UFC a long time ago. He had a 10-fight winning streak going. That's why I tried to do, it's tough, man, trying to remember everything. That's why I tried to do some of these reviews as we went along. We had some stoppages early, so I was able to shoot and then edit. Hopefully it's everything blends in pretty well. Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button, subscribe, dislike button. Let me know how I'm doing here. But the first and second rounds. First round, I was definitely give the Branch in this. He just kind of seemed to control it a little more and going after some takedowns and landing some shots. Not so much even the harder shots, but he was landing more and a little more active. Second round, both these guys still seemed a little tight and a little, apprehensive. But, Jotko landed a right, seemed like he hurt Branch. And, Branch just seemed real tentative and just, really kind of, hold him back. And it was funny. As soon as I was noticing that in the fight, and I kind of wrote that down in my notes, Joe Rogan kind of mentioned the same thing, and that actually happened a couple times tonight between Joe Rogan and Cormier. But what I wrote down in my notes, they right before they were about this, they said the same thing. So I think we were kind of right on a little bit of the wavelength there. I mean, obviously those guys are way more technical than I am, but every now and then I do get a little bit of a tidbit. But Jotko spinning wheel kick in the second round, grazed Branch, and it wasn't too bad of a round, but I definitely would have to give that to Jotko. Going into the third, they were definitely going in tied. But Branch got some more takedowns in that third round and kind of really made it tough on, Jotko, especially there on the ground. But going in, it's even throwing some foot stomps in there. But very close fight. Could have kind of went either way. Branch ended up getting the nod in the end by unanimous decision, actually. I believe all the judges scoring it basically around the same. And, but definitely a good fight. Great fight. Was after that was Frankie Edgar and Yair Rodriguez. And let me tell you, this fight started out, Frankie Edgar is just freaking amazing, man. And it seemed like they were really trying to boost Yair Rodriguez's, ranking and just, really kind of boost him into the top a lot faster, than they normally would some other guys, especially. But they really had to try and find some different opponents, I think, for some of these guys. When you have, Holloway, Aldo fighting, and, Frankie's fought just about everyone else in the division that's, able to fight right now. You can't even really, he's fought everyone at this point, except really Max Holloway. That's why in a couple weeks, if Max Holloway is able to, do what basically only Conor McGregor has been able to do, then, we might see that matchup because, Frankie was totally dominant and just totally relentless, mean. I wrote down some other adjectives there in my notes, but they kept using the word relentless. What did I write there? But let me tell you, that was definitely, it's just after the first round, Yair Rodriguez gets up and you didn't even recognize the kid. He looked totally different. If he almost looked like the Elephant Man, or there was another movie a long time ago called Mask with Eric Stoltz and Cher. He really bruised up this Yair's face, man, and it was crazy. But Yair is definitely still into it, still going. Didn't want to give up, and I give him credit. The kid's got a lot of heart. Going into the end of that second round, Yair's on the stool, and they start talking to him. And then when the doctor comes over, and that was basically it from there. But he was trying to still, hey, I could see, and really go. But it came to a point where he went past that 1 minute, that 60 seconds that he needed, to get himself ready for the next round. And he wasn't off that stool. And Frankie Edgar yelling, he's not off the stool. And he was going crazy. But, then the ref called it off. But the ref did kind of call it off a little bit earlier. It just really wasn't mentioned or kind of shown. They did go back to the replay later and show that it was called off. And, he went and showed Frankie Edgar that he called it off again. Rightfully so. Fight definitely should not have gone on any longer than it did. Give Yair's a young kid, give him a chance to fight another day. I think a matchup for him would be someone on that cusp of that, top 10, and maybe another young. I would have liked to see him against the Korean Superboy, actually, but he was just matched up with someone in an event. I can't remember off the top of my head which one that was, but look that up and definitely might bring that up in a discussion. Hopefully this week, get some. I want to start getting the Objective Perspective podcast going on a weekly basis. I haven't really been able to do that. Do those on a standalone, not getting too many viewers, getting a decent amount, I guess, for what I'm doing. I don't really out there sharing. So if you want, please share the video, hit that like button. Please comment, let me know how I'm doing, and keep it going. Hopefully the content will get better and not worse, right? But not moving on yet. I still want to talk about Frankie Edgar, man, because I don't know. If you think Frankie Edgar deserves a shot against Max Holloway, please leave it in the comments and give me a reason why. If not Frankie Edgar against Max Holloway, or even Jose Aldo, okay, then who should get the title shot? Who should be next? Who should be facing the winner? After the unification bout that's in a couple weeks. That's going to be, a big question that's going to be happening. And, being that the welterweight title was basically the next challenger for the welterweight title was basically sewn up in the next fight, because that's what we're going to segue into right now. Damian Maia versus Jorge Masvidal. And like I just said, after the fight, Dana White looked at the winner, through the cage, and that's it. It's your shot. You got it. And that man was Damian Maia. And this was a close fight, really. It really was. And Daniel Cormier kept making these comments, about how do you score it with the damage, because let me tell you, man, if you just take out that first round, and I have to look at my notes to see if I wrote down the scores. I know it was a split decision, I believe 29-28, 29-28, and 29-28, and I believe, obviously 2 rounds to 1 Damian Maia. I just don't I don't know how the rounds were actually individually scored or broken down. I'm shooting this right now, right after basically events ended, because I want to get this out and, kind of get some rest. And I'll check into the press conferences and all the aftermath of what was UFC 211 in Dallas, Texas, later on in, tomorrow and we'll have a little more time, but let's talk about this fight. So first round, I mean, still a lot of shots were kind of landed, and Damian Maia basically had a takedown, got him, with some scrambles, but just stayed on him, man. He's like, man, it's so hard to find a comparison to what he's like when he's getting on your back and he's just kind of around your neck. But in the first round, he had this body lock on Jorge, and he had Jorge's back for a good 2.5-3 minutes. And finally, towards the end of the round, Jorge was able to kind of really shake that off. And at one point during that whole time, when he had the body lock, and it really wasn't on Jorge's stomach for that entire time to where it was constricting him, but it was on him, and he was using that to hold himself, attached to Jorge. He was standing there, and they're standing on, inside, obviously on one side of that octagon. And, Jorge had thrown him off him at the end of the round, landed some shots, and Jorge landed a lot of punches on Damian Maia. Damian Maia was cut in the first, definitely swollen up a little bit, in those rounds. So, it came down in the second round, the same thing. Started out, man, Jorge was throwing some hard shots, man, hard leg kicks, hard punches, landing so many, which I thought so many hard shots on Damian Maia. And then, Maia would, after a little bit, just kind of circling and moving away and doing a lot of moving away and trying to counter, but not really doing too well with his stand-up. And after about 2.5 minutes of the round, he would go in there for a takedown and generally, there was times in between when Jorge was doing some really good sprawling and keeping Maia off, especially in the second round. But, he did, get him down again for a little bit. And, that whole battle was there again. And Jorge did a phenomenal job at fighting off Damian Maia's submissions. I mean, you're forgetting, and people forget that, this guy submitted Carlos Condon in like 2 minutes. In like two minutes. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, Carlos Condon, do I even have to give Carlos Condon's resume? I mean, come on. That was amazing. He could have gotten, so many other people would have gotten a title shot after a performance like that against Carlos Condon, but not Damian Maia. And I still think that he hadn't gotten a title shot, even after some of the victories he's had. He won 6 in a row. I think that was number 7, if I'm not mistaken. If I am mistaken, then let me know in the comments. And 29-28, 29-28. Anyway, I believe that it was probably due to the fact that it was about 3 years ago that he lost to Rory McDonald. Rory McDonald had some losses, obviously to Wonder Boy and the Robbie Lawler before his exit from the UFC and his signing with Bellator. Now he is considered and is. There's not being too much of a consideration about it. Rory McDonald is one of the best welterweights in the world. So he's definitely one of the best welterweights on Bellator's roster. Excuse me, if not the best welterweight on Bellator's roster, and obviously that will all that will come to fruition, and we will find out that soon over the next month. Actually, we'll probably know who will be fighting for the title after Lorenz Larkin and Lima fight. But back to the UFC, and by the way, Bellator NYC. I'm still saying Vanderlei Silva's not going to make that walk. Anyway, back to this welterweight title fight. I'm sorry, back to this welterweight contender fight. Going in the third round, much of the same. Jorge Masvidal sprawling and brawling, man, landing some hard shots, hard kicks, hard leg kicks, hard head kick. I mean, he was everywhere. I'm not sure what the punch stat ratio was, but he landed so many. I kind of really liked the damage that Jorge did, and I really felt that in Maia, I kind of thought he won that fight, but I would have gave it to Jorge. If I was judging that fight, I think I would have gave it to Jorge. Obviously, Maia with the first, but with the damage he was doing with a lot of his strikes in that second round and in the third round, I was definitely looking at giving him both of those rounds and 29-28 in his way, but unfortunately did not go that way for Jorge. I'm sure that kid will bounce back super fast and want to fight. I wonder against who. I really wonder against who. I don't see him really wanting to fight Robbie Lawler unless Lawler, they're both at least former teammates. I mean, I know they'd fight each other. They're not like those. Either one of those guys are like those type of fighters that are going to, I don't want to fight this guy, but I think there probably have to be something bigger on the line for it. But, now that Jorge's going to be coming off a loss, we'll see. Interesting note real quick, while I just remember that Ali Quinta was at this fight. I don't know if he got tickets from the UFC, but he's been doing a lot of running his mouth and stuff, and how he's been hating, but he made it to that fight. I don't know if he bought his own tickets, but he was right behind Demetrius Johnson. So we'll see, man. We'll see if he's trying to lobby to get a fight on that Long Island card, which is now being headlined by Chris Weidman versus Calvin Gastelum, which we saw announced yesterday at that summer kickoff, their press conference, where Michael Chiesa and Kevin Lee went to blows. That was definitely wanted to talk more about that, but it's certainly been being talked about a lot. I thought it was kind of funny while I was watching that. I did find it comical. I really did, and I like Michael Chiesa, man. I remember a lot of the tribulations that kid went through on that Tough Live. With his father passing and him, going back home for a few days and then coming back and then, winning it all, man. And he was a beast in that competition. He had some big wins, man. He had wins over James Vick. He beat Ally Quinta to win the show. So that's some big wins, especially at 155. If you look at a lot of the competition that he faced just on that show and even after the fact. So, not to get off of the recap and the review, but yeah, just get into that press conference real quick. I really think, if it's going to really piss you off that much for what he was really saying about, your mom, which I didn't even really think it was that bad. All he really said was, I know your mama has tickets, but I'm sure it was a little bit derogatory, sure. But if you're going to jump up like that, you just should have rushed him. That's it. Because you stood there kind of looking like I was like, he's not going anywhere. And then you even mentioned, you need to get somebody up there. And I was just like, you're not going anywhere. Like, you're waiting. It's almost like a show. Like, that almost seemed to me like some WWE, like he tried to, some ridiculously stupid scripted thing that they might have did. I don't know, and not let the bodyguards in on it. Hey, man, make sure you rush in here after he mentions that mama joke, and obviously it didn't happen. But after the fight, Damian Maia went in front of the fence there where Dana White was sitting, and he proceeded to say, hey, title shot. And Dana White, visibly you can hear and you visibly see Dana White, and you can hear him say, you're next. It's, it's your shot. So it looks like it's going to be Tyron Woodley against Damian Maia for the 170-pound title. When that fight is going to happen, I do not know. I'm not too sure. It was teased on the UFC Unfiltered podcast, the Matt Serra and Jim Norton podcast. They had Dean Thomas as a guest, and they had called in and gotten Tyron on the phone to talk a little bit. And there was a lot of teases going around who he might be fighting, and there's been talks of Nick Diaz and some others. But if you look at that welterweight top 10, it's definitely a little bit of an enigma with who you can really put in next for the title shot. So that's why if you weren't going to put in Damian Maia, so him getting it makes obviously the most sense. The winner of this fight, would make the most sense of getting the title shot next. And then go from there and see how the division goes. I still am really a little disappointed that the UFC let Lorenzo Larkin go. I thought he was. I think, man, I could see him making some noise over there in Bellator, but I thought he was really on the cusp in the 170-pound division to, kind of get in there. He has some wins in his career over some guys like Robbie Lawler and others, Neil Magny and whatnot. So, getting into the co-main event. The co-main event of the evening, the 115-pound strawweight division, the ladies. This division, obviously, everyone knows, is anchored down and controlled and run by Joanna Jedrzejczyk. If I said that wrong, I know I said it right at least once or twice. So we'll just call her Joanna Champion, because that's what she still is. And I might have picked against her in this fight. Before I close out the show, I will go over my picks and how many won, how many lost, and whatnot. So, but to get back to this one, I might have, like I said, picked against her in this fight, but it wasn't a total confidence pick. It's never totally a confident pick against Joanna, and I did pick against Damian Maia in the fight before, and it was definitely a close one. But this fight started out first round. You could have possibly gave given that round, to Jessica. She's such a tough girl, man. She's tough girl. Just withstood so much punishment, 25 minutes, giving it back as much as she possibly could. But Joanna's footwork, man, was really the key. I thought her footwork and being able to circle out, get in there, step into those hooks, and then circle back out, and the kicks that she was throwing, avoiding a lot of the takedowns, and just getting, landing the shots, man. She landed so many hard shots, a lot of hard head kicks, and Andrade, man, she just got Jessica. She kept coming and kept coming and kept coming, and 5 rounds. I believe most of the judges had it 50 to 45, 50-45, and then 50-44. All to the winner, and still UFC Strawweight champion Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Hopefully I said that right. No disrespect. And if you, she's great. I mean, she's phenomenal. Definitely wouldn't want to mess with her, man. She'd probably hit me about 13 times before I even knew what the hell was going on. And then I probably wouldn't have any more toothache because they would be gone. So, but she dominated this fight, man. And you wonder what's next, because next month on UFC 212 is going to be the number 1 and number 2 ranked contenders in that division. Claudia Gadelha. Claudia, who's 0-2 against Joanna, and Karolina Kalivojevic. She's a gorgeous one herself, too. I hope I said her name right. No, definitely wouldn't want to get your name wrong. But, that's to be an interesting fight. But I think they might be giving that next title shot to Rose. I really believe that, because she's a fresh contender for Joanna. And Joanna tied Ronda Rousey's women's division record of 5 title defenses in her next fight. I'm guessing, and this is just a guess, like I said, I haven't watched any of this is right after the fight. I've not watched any of the press conferences or interviews or anything like that, but I would assume if Joanna has gotten out of there semi-okay, she had just bruised up on her face and whatnot, but I assume you could probably possibly see her in September, October, maybe November if it's going to be a New York fight. I know she'd probably want to fight in New York again, so maybe her versus Rose in New York in November, and for see if she breaks the record. So, moving on, we have the main event of the evening. 5 rounds in the UFC heavyweight division. Former champion Junior Dos Santos versus the current reigning and defending champion Stipe Miocic. This had so much build up to this fight, and let me tell you something. Stipe, like I said in the beginning here of this segment, Stipe, beast. That would be the theme, basically, for the end of this night. So, this starts out a little bit different than the first fight. It started out a lot faster, I think, than the first fight. The first fight started out in the first round kind of slow-paced a little bit, and then kind of gradually developed into that war, that 5-round war that most people expected to see tonight. Excuse me. I did not expect this fight to go 5 rounds, but I did not expect this fight not to go past the first, if you understand if I said that right. I guess English is my only language, but I guess sometimes it's tough. I expected Stipe to win this fight kind of by knockout, maybe the second or third round, but second was really even early. That's even pushing it. I really kind of thought it would have went to the third, because I thought the first round would be another feeling out process where there wouldn't be too much. I thought there'd be some action, but I didn't think there'd be crazy action in the first, and then I thought we'd start to see that war develop into the second and third round, and that's when I thought Stipe would kind of capitalize and possibly, end it there. But Stipe did not want to really hang out in that octagon too long, because he ended that fight, I think, within a minute. I don't have it pulled up, and I didn't even write it down because it was amazing. And what we're going to talk about is just on that 38 to 40 second, maybe a minute. I don't know, 2 minutes. The fight was not that long, and he was pounding on his chest, sitting on top of that fence, saying it was just too easy, too easy, too easy. And he definitely did make that look pretty easy. But like I said in the preview show, Junior's alternated wins and losses over the last since 2013. There's for the last 3 or 4 years now. He's had some good wins, and he's had some good wins, but he's also had some tough losses. So within that time, Stipe, since his last loss, the Junior, he's been on a roll, man, and he's just gotten better and better and better, and he's knocked out everyone he's fought, from Orlowski to Verdum to Overeem, now JDS. There was somebody else there, Mark Hunt. Don't mean to disrespect Mark Hunt, but I'm sorry. I almost forgot you got knocked out, so that's really not much to disrespect. But this fight was basically some leg kicks landed there in the beginning. Looked like they really hurt Stipe, which later on found out that they did hurt him pretty bad. So, he just kept kind of hunting and landing some shots, and then he just landed a right cross over there on the jaw, boom, straight right, bam. While he was just hunting JDS down. Most of those kicks were kind of going away, and Stipe didn't take too much damage, I thought, in the facial or in the upper area. Just basically some of those leg kicks, because Junior spent a lot of that time trying to get away from Stipe and get away from Stipe's just mass of, just how he was just imposing himself, everywhere. And he just kept hunting them down. And once he knocked Junior down, you could have definitely called the fight. There was probably just like there was earlier in that featherweight fight, Chas Skelly versus Jason Knight. I believe it's Jason. Anyway, about 10, 11, maybe 12 ridiculously unnecessary shots that were landed. And I'm not blaming the fighter. I don't blame the fighter at all. He's got to keep going until ref stops it. Stipe was on Junior after he landed those shots, and Junior at the ground. He's hitting him, and he's going, hey, come on. And it was Herb Dean. I thought Herb Dean would have stopped it a little sooner. I know Herb was trying to give Junior every opportunity, but he wasn't moving, man. His body wasn't limp to where when a guy's out, but he was just covering up. He was just covering up. He wasn't trying to cover up and then move into a different position to stand up and maybe get away. He was just covering up. And for my, never would ever try to say that I can referee a fight better than Herb Dean. Would never do that, ever. But from my experience of watching fights, and I've watched thousands of fights, it's got to be over thousands. And that's just MMA. I would definitely have to say that, when a guy is kind of in that, down position where he's covering up his head in the way that Junior Dos Santos was, and he's not moving to improve or moving to get out of the way. He's just standing there or sitting there, laid down, covering up, as such. After, these guys are throwing fast. Even these heavyweights are probably landing at least 2 punches a second. So you got to jump in there for every second. That's it. You're talking at least 2 or 3 punches, and there is at least 8 or 9, possibly 10. I couldn't even count them this time. The other fight I counted them. They're in the replay. But you got to be in there. They got to protect these guys, man. And for some reason, sometimes I think that they're a little more hesitant to jump in there on heavyweights because they're bigger guys, and they feel that maybe that's they're bigger guys, they can take more of a impact. But you're getting that impact from another monster. So, kind of, I guess, levels itself out as far as I know. But and still, the result of the fight, and still UFC heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic, he will look to break the record in his next title defense. He will look to break the record of most title defenses held by the heavyweight. No champion in the UFC history has held the title for more than 2 defenses. I think 2 is tops, and there's a bunch of guys with the 2 defenses, and Stipe adds himself to that list. I might have put that, something like that, in the preview and screwed that up. I don't know if I did. Check it out. Check out the preview. It's going to be on the channel. Objective Perspective, Episode 6, the UFC 211 preview. I go over my fight picks and the predictions. But now let's get to my real quick and see how we did with my fight picks. Like I said, I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I do have them written down here. So let's get to that. I did pick Miocic for that win, and I am correct with that. So that's 1. I did pick Andrade over Joanna or Jedrzejczyk. I was trying to pick the upset there. Obviously, that didn't come out too well there for me. So right now we're 1-1, 1-2 because I did pick Masvidal as well over Damian Maia. I did have Frankie Edgar over Yair Rodriguez. I thought that fight was going to be a decision, so I'm glad Frankie finished him. Good for him. I also had David Branch over Jotko, so right there. Just on the main card, we're 3-2. 3 wins, 2 losses. The Eddie Alvarez-Dustin Poirier fight, I did have Eddie Alvarez. We all know that was a no contest due to the illegal strikes. Chaz Skelly versus Jason Knight. My pick, I believe, was Jason Knight. So, right there. James Vick versus Reyes. I had Reyes. James Vick totally annihilated him in the first round. Thank you very much. Jessica, this isn't, sorry. The heavyweight fight, Chase Sherman versus Rashard Coulter. Man, this was a great fight. I went over, obviously, we talked about that a little earlier. Great fight. I did pick Coulter. Almost took it in there. He definitely took some damage in the legs. But in the end, Chase would win that fight. Good for him. First UFC win. I was wrong there. Also, on the Fight Pass prelims, did I miss any of the other ones? Boom, boom, boom. Fight Pass prelims, Jessica Aguilar, Courtney Casey. I had Courtney Casey, and she won that fight. Dominated. I also lost that close decision. Gabriel Benitez versus Barzola. Enrique Barzola took that in a split decision. I had Enrique. And in the first fight, Gustav Antikilov wins by submission in the first round. So I had him in that. So not too bad, I guess, for some picks. Like I said, that's just for fun. So I had 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, at least I'm 500, I guess. So, wow, if y'all made it this far, hit that like and or dislike, because if you're watching it this long and you dislike it, I mean, and hit the dislike. I mean, just be honest with yourself. But that's crazy. Thanks for watching, though. Hit the subscribe button. I got more content going to be coming out. We got the UFC. We have the Ultimate Fighter 25 Redemption preview that I'm going to be coming out Tuesday. Ultimate Fighter review will be coming out after the show on Wednesday night, Wednesday morning, early. I will definitely be up to get that out. quick. Those are usually about 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes tops. I definitely won't go too long on it. I'll probably pick something else to talk about real quick in between. Stay tuned for the channel. I will be also in July starting to review that new Dana White show that's going to be coming on Tuesday nights that he's going to be running fights out of the Tough Gym. Off the top of my head, I did have it written down somewhere. Or actually, I didn't write it down. I meant to write down the name of the show, but I'm sure you heard it throughout the night of tonight in the fights. If you didn't, you can look that up online. Dana White's doing a new show on Tuesday nights. I don't even know what channel it's going to be on. I think FS1 or FX. But we will have it. And I also will have a preview for this week's fight, which is next Sunday, I believe. Alexander Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira at UFC Fight Night that's in Stockholm, Sweden. I will definitely be reviewing that main card and previewing that main card and most of the fights on there. Be a quick preview. Being that it's one of those European cards, they're sometimes tough to get to know all those fighters. I'm not going to claim to be a total expert at all, not even close. But, like I said, thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, share the video, share it around, let people know about the 203 Fight Network and Mark G. That's me, this is the channel, and I'm going to get some sleep, man. I'm starting to go a little crazy, but it's been a long night of fights. UFC 211 is all set. Dallas. We will check out the press conference and all the news tomorrow. If there's anything crazy interesting, I'll probably put something out. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Everyone be safe and have a wonderful night. Good night, and I will see you soon.